Mere conservatism.
Hey, David.
Hey, Cleve, what's up, man?
Well, the temperature is up.
Oh, my goodness, it's so hot.
It is.
And it's humid. It's like
humid
in our area.
Swampy. We're in Georgia and South Carolina region, for those of you who are listening to this podcast elsewhere.
We kind of live right on the edge of what I would call low country. Would you consider us low country, or are we kind of on the edge of that?
No, we're not quite low country.
We're not quite there, but we're close enough, and we do kind of live in a gully. If you ever look at a topographical map, we're kind of in a gully here, and so it gets really steamy.
At the time of the production of this podcast, the heat index will probably be at 105, 106 before the day is over with. So, so there's that. But I'm really hot in the collar about something else.
Really?
Yes. Hot under the collar about what's going on with our progressive culture. David, for years I thought we would have a little bit longer before it would taint the world of sports. Because the world of sports has been one of those few little islands that we could go to get away from the cultural debate and politics, and everybody root or cheer or boo, not based upon anybody's skin color or other stuff, but just because of the game. And I'm afraid we've reached that point now where sports is pretty much being just inundated with.
Yeah, it's started creeping in a few years ago, and it has accelerated quite rapidly into sports. And that's not the only American institution it has crept into that I'm surprised about. The military is also getting very woke, which disturbs me.
And that's the most dangerous one.
That's the worst one. But you're right. Sports is a place where we were supposed to go to escape a little bit.
Yeah. And root for your team. Matter of fact, you and somebody who are polar opposites politically could root for the same team together. At least in one few minutes, there's unity.
Yeah, we could all gripe about the Braves and their bullpen. No matter what our political bent is.
Well, here's the thing. It's even affected the Olympics. I'm one of those people, year in and year out, I always look forward to the Olympics. I got to tell you, I don't have a buzz about the Olympics this year. Just me, but I've heard others say something similar.
The Olympics is weird. The Olympics is unique because... So I had a friend comment online on a message board that I'm on say that they didn't need a whole bunch of flag waving at the Olympics, and they really said this, and I thought to I responded. I said that's literally the only reason to have the Olympics is for people to come from their country and wave their flag.
Yes,
that's literally the only reason. If you're not going to do that, there are world championships and there's other competitions that they do all the time that people from different countries compete in and championships and stuff like that. This is the Olympics. The point, the only reason to do it, is to celebrate your country. Now we have in America, and I don't think any other country is doing this, in America we have athletes that have been sent by our country. They are effectively ambassadors for the United States.
Ostensibly, yeah.
Who are protesting the United States.
Big time. Big time.
To me, that's not cool. That's really not why this event exists. And so, yeah, it's a little bit of a problem. And it's also not as widespread. There's a few that get attention, like the women's soccer team and one person in particular on the soccer team, or a hammer thrower, which suddenly people care about hammer throwing. All this, it's really strange. But there's some of those.
There are a few others, but the point is, it's still. I'll give you an example of where it still is as far as the Olympics is concerned. You mentioned the American flag. ESPN writer William Roden, he's a black writer at ESPN, he came out saying that he was triggered at the sight of all the American flags while covering the Olympic Games. Roden took issue with the topic nationalism that the flag represents, and he said that the flag reminded him of January 6th Capitol riot and the rise of white nationalism. And so for him, even the American flag carries connotation of white supremacy, and therefore it disturbed him. Now, all the nations are flying their flags, but of all the flags being flown, the American flag is the sign of nationalism.
Yeah, well, with all due respect, what's the gentleman's name?
William Roden.
William Roden. That's a stupid opinion. Now, he has a right to his stupid opinion, but that's a dumb opinion.
Yeah.
First of all, rise of white nationalism? Where? There is no that the rise of white nationalism is a myth.
Yes,
that is not happening. Of
course, white supremacy.
That's not a thing.
It's a myth created by the Democrats and by the media to further what they're doing right now.
Are there white supremacists? Yes,
of course there are.
Is there?
Of course,
this is so ridiculous to even talk about. Is there a rise in white nationalism? There really isn't. There really isn't. There are the same 5 people probably that are all FBI informants informing on each other because they don't know each other are FBI. Remember the sting they did about the guys who were going to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, and they found out that it was completely instigated and orchestrated by FBI.
Right.
That FBI people that happened to be undercover.
Yeah.
They were all working together. Anyway, that's kind of a side note. But the point is that this is a stupid opinion. The American flag does not stand for white nationalism. And if that's what you see, your mind and your brain is perverted and twisted into something.
But here's the thing. He's not alone in sharing that weird stance, that understanding. I can remember even as a young black man, even during my time when there was, to me, actual discrimination, that when there was real Jim Crow, I can remember a time that when the Olympics came, all that was set aside, and there was a sense of pride. I mean, I remember seeing the American flag waving, and you know how when you win your event and get the gold and they play your anthem, and hearing the America's anthem over and over again.
The pride of that, because our nation is great and what we stand for is great, and we can go to those Olympics and we can look at all those other countries and we can say we are the ideal in America.
Yes,
despite the problems of humanity, which humanity shares. Humanity doesn't share the privileges we have in America because we're unique and we're different. The bad things about America are universal.
Right. And other nations.
The good things about America are unique. Yeah. But that's not what people want you to believe. The left wants you to believe the opposite of that.
And again, Dave, let me just say this. When I say rooting for your nation, and I mean, I think other nations should root for their nations. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that, that we're the only nation should be lifted up. I mean, we're talking about an event where it's about coming together as citizens of your nation, finally, over all the differences, and having something to cheer on. Yeah. I love that.
Well, and again, our nation is outstanding, and we should be able to celebrate that. But we have a problem right now because we're in the Olympics, and so many people in this country, including a lot of the athletes that we've sent to the Olympics, they insult America. Mm-hmm. They denigrate America.
Yes.
They criticize America unfairly.
Yeah.
And so we're not that shining city on a hill anymore, and all the other countries can see that the gravitas is gone.
Yeah.
At the Olympics this year for the Americans. And I hate that because I'm somebody that likes to see America on top because it's my country.
I mean that. And again,
that doesn't mean that other countries
used to be true for everybody. That used to be true across parties. What you're saying, that used to be true.
And the left has done this to our country. The left has done this to our country. Joe Biden personifies it because he goes around and Obama did the same thing. He goes around talking about how bad America is.
Yeah. Apologizing
for it, about our terrible history and the sins of America that we haven't yet reckoned with, which is a total lie. This hurts our foreign policy in very serious ways, and it also hurts us in not as serious ways, but still important at the Olympics and the way our nation is perceived by us and other countries. It's not cool. I'm going
to make a statement here that even to you may sound a little bit kind of a stretch. But I believe because of the lack of national pride in our athletes, not all of them, because there are many that are giving it their all.
Yeah.
But there's still a malaise over the overall Olympic representation of this country. I believe that the zeal for winning and the pride in winning on behalf of this nation is gone, and I think that's affecting our performances. I mean, we had our American basketball team lose to France, of all things, and they're looking around saying, how'd that happen? And then we have, and I want to get your opinion on this, Simone Biles, arguably the best in her events ever, actually, and now we hear her saying, I just mentally I'm just not there, and I just need to back away, And I hear people saying, how brave of her to do that, to show that she's not afraid to confess her mental frailties and back out. And I'm saying, that's not what heroism and perseverance used to mean. What do you say to that?
Well, it's difficult for me to have an opinion because I feel like I don't know all the information.
And that's important.
And I heard about this just like everybody else did, and I thought there's got to be more to what's going on here than that. And so I've read about it a little bit, and I've listened to some things that Simone Biles has said. I don't. Let me say it this way: I'm not mad at her for feeling like she can't compete. I mean, whatever. That's up to her. But the athletes that we admire and the athletes that we aspire to be like, because really that's what athletics is about. I mean, we see people do amazing things that are very hard, that overcome obstacles, and do and compete and do something amazing. That's why we love athletes, and they inspire us.
Yes, right.
I don't. While she should do this if she needs to do it, I don't know if she was risking. She may have been risking injury to compete, depending on what was going on with her and being able to know where she was in the air and all this stuff. I don't know, but I don't think that this action from her needs to be the thing that we hold up as admirable about her. There's a lot of things to admire about her.
Yeah. Well,
and I do personally. I think a lot of people should. Her accomplishments and her story of overcoming adversity and things like that. But those are the things that overcoming adversity are the things that we should celebrate about her, not succumbing to adversity. And I even hesitate to say that about her because I don't want to be overly critical, not having all the information. I'm just saying, like, it's fine if she can't compete, but that's not why she's a hero.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
No, I guess what I'm trying to say is I get what you're saying, and I actually believe that she did put maybe too much pressure on herself because she was expected to be perfect. Anything less than a goal for her was considered a failure. My simple point is this. I've seen athletic events throughout the years where great players played injured. They played at some type of point where they could not do their best.
Yes.
One of my favorite players, Michael Jordan in the NBA, he played a game in which he had the flu. I mean, he was just totally out of it, but he went in the game anyway. He didn't play his normal best, but he gave it all out there. When he came to the bench, he almost passed out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's the kind of thing I admire. Okay.
And that is inspirational, but you see people out there saying, no, it's admirable when you're like that to say no and not do it.
And admit your weakness, I guess.
So admit your weakness. Okay, so I'm saying it is understandable if Michael Jordan had the flu and he couldn't play, that he wouldn't play. That's understandable. Is it admirable? I don't think so.
Especially because your team needs you, all right?
Well,
and our team needed her big time.
Because guess what? I can also not play in the NBA Finals. I do that all the time.
Yes.
Tiger Woods won the U.S. Open on a broken leg. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
The man's leg was broken, and he won the U.S. Open. That is crazy intense.
Let me say it right now.
There's other examples, too, that we can point to.
We're talking about physical stuff, and they're saying her problem was mental. Maybe she suffers from depression, chronic depression, and they're saying that there's such a stigma against that it was brave of her to admit that she was mentally having some issues.
I guess, I mean, I guess I could see that. Yeah. It's brave to admit that she's had some issues, but look, the hero is the person who is in mental anguish and still accomplishes their goal.
Right. Maybe not as best as they normally do, but they still do it. They finish it.
And I just have a really hard time I don't have a hard time admiring Simone Biles. I do. But I have a hard time admiring her for this, if that makes sense.
Let me draw it home, what I'm trying to say, and then we'll go to this next topic. For me, it is part of an atmosphere that I see over our nation right now, where everybody is thought to think in terms of what is best for me, and not for the team or not for everybody that you're working with, not for your partners, not for the rest of the family. It's what's best what's in it for you. And if it's not enough for you, then you are the one who are cheered for thinking of yourself first, okay? When it used to be the opposite, it was the selfless action that seemed to get the applause of people. When somebody says, I'm not able to do my best, but what I can do, I'm going to do it because I'm part of this team. Anyhow,
well, look,
I just think things have changed.
People call Simone Biles the GOAT, the greatest of all time, and she probably is, and probably
she's amazing,
and probably will go down as the greatest of all time. I would not imagine that she's finished competing. However, she's not the greatest of all time because of what she did in the 2021 Olympics.
And I think we'll end it with that.
That's just not the case.
Yeah.
She's the greatest because of the gold medals and the great things that she's done, not the things that she didn't do.
I think we'll end it with that because to me that statement you just said summed it quite well. It really did. Okay, now we're going to find out what the Justice Department is doing, filing lawsuits against states like Georgia over the new election laws. Now,
wait a second, Cleve. Are you? Do you have the Delta variant?
Why you say?
Are you? I'm just wondering because everybody seems to have it right now. I don't know if we're talking about COVID. The rise of COVID is back, and everybody's scared and worried about it. Are we going to talk about that at all?
This has something to do with it.
Okay,
and it does. It really does. Anyway, but now Biden's Justice Department is threatening to sue states for returning to pre-pandemic voting protocols. Or conducting election audits.
Okay.
Now, David, this is a biggie because in a memo, the DOJ said it is committed to preserving voting rights and will not hesitate to act if they see any states violating those voting rights, and that includes rolling back the pandemic protocols. So now, in answer to your question, this is why they cannot let the COVID emergency go. They need to have that there so they can do the protocol things for the next election and for the next election after that. I'm serious. This is serious.
It's very illustrative of the way the government works and what they want to do. They take a crisis and they never let it go. There's so many things. The
Democrat government. Okay, it's not a Republican thing to me. The Democrats, their mantra is never let a crisis go to waste.
Well, I'm a conservative because the government is the government.
Okay, I got you. All right.
Okay?
All right.
They don't let go of power and their opportunities to do things. We've had Republican governments, quote unquote, and we've had Democratic governments, quote unquote. Very few of them ever let go or roll back the power that they have amassed.
Okay.
So look, a lot of these election things that they did in 2020 were done illegally in some situations. Like in Pennsylvania, they went around the legislature to do these emergency measures to help people vote safely. That was the idea. And you and I have talked about the concept before of the fog of war, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Which is a very real thing, which means you do things when you're in a crisis that you wouldn't do when you're not in a crisis. And looking back, they were mistakes, and maybe you shouldn't have done those things.
But they were understandable because you couldn't see them at the time.
You excuse those things, or you understand those things because of the fog of war. So I would be generous to say, this is me being very generous, to say that a lot of these election rules that they put in place were due to the fog of war. And we were in a crisis that nobody was really sure exactly what was going to happen and where it was going to go, so they did these COVID protocols. Now that we're over COVID, and don't get me started on whether or not we're over COVID. Okay?
I got to get you started.
Now that we're over COVID, they want to say, okay, all the election rules that we had before there was a crisis, we're going to go back to those and enshrine those in law because we're not in a crisis anymore. We're going to go back to all the same rules that we had before 2020, and in fact, we'll even expand some voting. Some things that it'll be more expansive and more accessible than it was in 2018. But we're going to roll back some of these things that are hard to police that we had in place just because of COVID. And the government, this government, isn't having that.
Well, you answered your own question because we're never going to get over COVID.
That's the way they want it.
That's the whole. And I don't call it the fog of war anymore.
No,
I understand
not.
This was a fog machine that created a fog.
Thank you.
That was
That's
never.
great.
That's never been there, and they want to keep it up because if they can keep the pandemic protocols going and the emergency going, then and only then can they achieve what they need, which is to permanently enshrine the results of ballot fraud and everything else as a part of the American system. And if they do that, it's Democrat Party forever, or I should say Marxist Party forever.
There's a lot they can accomplish if they can keep a crisis going. And the fact that they're going to attack states that want to do audits is totally inappropriate. There's a lot of things.
What's that about?
There's a lot of things that this Justice Department are doing that are completely inappropriate.
Yeah.
This is a state issue. States run their own elections, and if they decide they want to audit what happened at the election, they ought to do that. And I say again, this election was very irregular. There's no debating that. There's no way you can say that.
It broke all the models and all the understood norms.
It was extremely irregular.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing. I saw a clip of a guy, I believe in Michigan, saying basically, listen to us. Don't just ignore us. Don't write us off. We want an audit because we're not sure about what happened in the election. And we would love to just be proven wrong. Just do the audit, show us the evidence, and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
But at least tell us, because guess what? We have a problem with what happened. We're not sure who to trust and what to believe, and an audit would really help us. And if we wanted to get the truth and we wanted to get to the bottom of it and we wanted everybody to be united and back on the same page, that kind of thing would be a good thing to do.
Well, it is no wonder then why they don't want the audits, why they don't want anybody talking about election fraud, why social media will still not entertain anybody making statements like that. I mean, if Joe Biden won 80 million votes, audits and everything else ought to be exactly what he wants, to show people the amazing truth behind his astounding victory. I mean,
because you're going to get an audit, and the audit should show you that there wasn't widespread voter fraud. If that's what happened, and then everybody could say, "Look, this is the thing." You have to give people information. You have to tell people everything, because when you don't, they fill in the gaps.
Yes.
This is why conspiracy theories and things like that, they get traction and they gain ground with a lot of people, and sometimes not a lot of people. But when you give information, you dispel a lot of these rumors. These things can't get traction.
And the opposite is true. When you don't give information, you create the very atmosphere you're trying to avoid.
Because we will all, everybody does it. We will all fill in the blanks with our head. And in many cases, we shouldn't, but we'll assume the worst thing.
Which is why when the CDC reverses course after other people begin to reverse course and other people behind them began to reverse course, and then they don't give you any stats to justify what they're doing.
Clown show.
So my point is, now when we talk about it, you and I are considered conspiracy people to say the CDC is actually in the pocket of the teachers union, so therefore it's not science anymore. We're conspiracy people, and yet at the same time, they will not release today with the necessary info to justify their back and forth on mask mandates and everything else.
I am not a conspiracy guy. I am really not. But what I am is when I see gaps and blackouts, I would like to know what's in the blackout.
Thank you.
I do everything I can not to fill in that gap with my own head.
But if you don't want to give the information, what can you do? I mean, if they don't want to fill the gaps themselves, or the officials, what else can you do? So my point is, to me, David, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The CDC is in the pocket of the Democrat Party. They're in the pocket of the media. They're in the pocket of the progressives. You cannot trust them. And if you can't trust, to me, what was once one of the perennial medical associations and agencies in the world at one time, this is a sad day for our nation. I can't trust the CDC. I can't.
Yeah, and Cleve, I think that I would really like to see this, the next Republican president that gets elected, and hopefully that happens in 3 years. Mm-hmm. There needs to be a political bloodbath.
Yes.
And what I mean
you better straighten this out right now.
Heads need to roll. Okay. And what I'm saying, what I mean is clean house.
Thank you. All right.
Every executive agency. I'm talking about have a job fair. We have thousands of openings in the CDC and in the FBI,
the Justice Department.
We need to do. I'm sorry, but we need to do this. We have to do this. The next Republican president cannot play nice with these people, and I think Trump tried to do a lot of that to an extent.
Well, initially he tried to get along and actually include those elements in his administration, and it just almost destroyed him from the start.
Yeah,
and so again,
it took him 2 years to stop the leaks from coming out of his administration, and where the Republican that hopefully it happens very soon. The Republicans need to get elected and then actually, for a change, exercise their political power.
I think we need to run on that, what you just said. I think that our candidates, both at the presidential level and everywhere, need to be running on the fact when we get into office, we're just going to go through every agency and we're going to go through everything and we're going to deal with these people who are out there simply to sabotage the progress of this nation. And somebody is going to say, David, see, that shows you're the one that doesn't want openness, but you're talking about crushing dissent. And that's what they'll say you're talking about.
No, what I want to do is not crush dissent. I want to get rid of unelected bureaucrats who are trying to run our country.
Thank you.
Because guess what? We elected Donald Trump. We did not elect people at this. We did not elect Dr. Fauci. In other words, we elected Donald Trump to make these decisions, and instead, all these executive agencies are creating laws and guidelines and things like that and making decisions that we didn't elect these people to do that. I want our elections to matter and us to decide who makes the rules, because we're supposed to have self-government in this country. We're supposed to decide this stuff together and decide what we want for our own lives. And these federal agencies take that away from us.
You got it. Well said, David. And I stand with you in total agreement on that. We've got a clean house, provided we get back into the position to do so. And I'm going to tell you, the Democrats are doing everything in their power to make sure that doesn't happen. Interesting discussion, David, that anybody can hear again anytime they want to on demand.
Yeah, they can do that at Apple Podcasts and also on YouTube and also on Facebook. And, Cleve, I'm glad we did the podcast today. I almost decided to pull out. I wasn't really in the right mental state when we started this, but I pushed through. I did it. I pushed through, and I feel a very big sense of accomplishment.
In all fairness, David, I don't think you're ever in the right mental state, but that's another story for another time. David Perry and I'm Cleve Walker, inviting you again to keep the faith and join us again for another edition of Mere Conservatism. Bye-bye.